Thank you very much for the candidates. We will begin with the first question this evening, and this question will be directed to Mr. Leonard. First, we'll be able to respond for 1 minute. If you were re-elected, how can you best protect marriage between one man and one woman?
Well, that's not an easy one to answer. Anyone that is familiar with that issue knows that we have been wrestling with a constitutional referendum, starting with a resolution in the House 1 year and then going to the Senate the following year. 6 years ago, when the Republicans held the majority in the House of Representatives, we passed that resolution out and we were unsuccessful in getting it heard on the other side. After that, the Democrats took control and they would not hear that amendment in the House, and so it started as a resolution in the Senate, has been heard the last 4 years in the Senate, and the Speaker of the House would not hear it. What I can tell you is that I believe that marriage is a commitment between one man and one woman. I support the resolution. I support putting it in our Constitution, and I think it's a travesty that we don't have it today.
Thank you. Mr. Banks, your response.
It's a very important question. I also support an amendment to the Indiana State Constitution to define marriage as between one man and one woman. It's not just an issue that when I get to the legislature I'll have an opportunity to work on. It's one that I have worked on in the past. It's one of the projects that we worked on to focus on the family. It's an issue that I've worked on over the past few years living back in Indiana to promote that cause. And that's why Indiana Family Institute, which is the state-based group that is associated with Focus on the Family, has endorsed me, along with American Family Association of Indiana and other pro-family and social conservative groups have endorsed me because I have a record on these issues and have fought for those types of values before. So it's an issue I care deeply about, and I look forward to being a leader on those types of issues when I get to the state senate.
Mr. Wall, your response.
I also believe that it is one man, one woman, and the values that I have been raised, from our family. Not much more I can elaborate on this here, but it's our values in not only in Indiana and our nation that makes us strong, and we need to stand and commit to these values moving forward. I'm hearing these questions across the district. Everyone's asking that same question. And they want to know where our values are. Our values are with our heart and with our church, and we need to stay steadfast. Thank you.
Mr. Fusselman.
This is a very important question because this comes down to our moral values and our principles and what our founding fathers, they stood on those principles. We must continue to push that marriage is between a man and a woman. This is something that I will hold very dear to my heart, will push for, and I think the majority of the people in this state want that. And so we have got to continue to push for this. We've got to continue to back it, and we need to hear from the people to know that that's what they want. And I'll be there to listen to that. I'll be there to push it in the House.
All right, gentlemen, the next question is an important one for the Tea Party because it's about taxes. What is your position on the Fair Tax Initiative? And Mr. Banks, you will have the first.
That's a great question. It's an issue that I've studied very extensively. The fair tax is a sort of a flat, a variation of a flat sales tax or a flat income tax. It gets very complicated. That's one of the issues I have with it. I've read books by conservatives on both sides of the issue. I support it in principle. I do have an issue with there's sort of a rebate policy that goes along with it, where the federal government sends a rebate back to people who earn so much money here or there. It's an issue that I want to learn a lot more about, and I've met with some of the folks here in the room about the issue, and I've also read some of the conservative views on why it might not be as good of an idea. I mean, it's something that advocates have proposed at the federal level. I understand it could also be enacted at at the state level as well, and I'd be more I'd be someone who would support, frankly, tearing up the IRS and the tax code and replacing it with something more fair like this.
Thank you, Mr. Wall.
Yes, fair tax seems to me it makes sense. I don't know if you've seen what's going on in the state of Indiana right now, that it seems like our school systems are getting less and less. They're hurting. They're laying off school teachers. We're possibly going to be closing schools around this district. What's happening is because there's less money coming back here and the restraints that is going on, they're coming up with extra fees in our community. I'm sorry, but whenever you come back to our community and add a fee, that's a tax. We need to put a stop to it. And if we can look at new systems, new ways, let's use the phrase, think out of the box. Let's get in there and do what we can. I'm all for tearing that up, and we're going to have a lot of people in the IRS that's going to be on the unemployment line, and I think Mr. Leonard will have to deal with them later on. But we have to put our foot down and say no more taxes, no more fees. Thank you.
Mr. Fussman?
Yeah, it's time to tear the house down. You know what? They have come up with so many different ways to tax us that they don't even know how it's getting there. We've got LOIT, we've got seated, we've got sales tax, we've got property tax, we've got this tax, that tax. We don't even know what we're paying. I think it's time. I love to call it consumption tax. You know, one tax. And when you're going to do property tax, why don't you put property tax on property? Not try to assess a building that you don't even know what it's worth anyway. You know what? So let's go to consumption tax, which then, in return, puts the money in your pocket. You decide when you want to spend it, and you pay the tax then. Because you know what that means? That's just like a small businessman who has cash flow. If you have cash flow, you have the cash in your pocket, you're going to spend it. We're going to get the tax. You don't mind paying tax. I don't. I don't mind paying my fair share of tax, but when they start reaching into my pocket and taking my money before I ever have an opportunity, that's what we got to stop.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard.
Before you start that one, could you read that question again? I believe it had to do with the flat tax.
Fair tax.
Fair tax.
What is your position on the fair tax initiative?
Thank you. We got a little confused up here, so I want to answer the question, I guess. First of all, I'm not sure I'm in favor of a fair tax. I would favor a fair tax if we took at least an equal amount of tax off somewhere else. So many of the new taxes, and I can say this from 8 years of experience in the State House, when you come up with a new tax, the other tax doesn't go away. And so you have exactly what Ron was talking about, is you have another tax and another tax and another tax and another tax. We have seated taxes, we have CAGIT taxes, we have COIT taxes, we now have LOIT taxes, we have every kind of fee that you can think of. We put 1 and 2 and 3% caps on property taxes. And now we're talking about putting fees on outside the caps. And we need to stop it. Fair tax? Yes. But let's get rid of the other ones first.